absolutely abhorrent. They should be ashamed.
Are there more questions from the gallery here?
If, if the injunction remains,
Yes.
what are we looking at? Are we looking at months? Are we looking at perhaps a year before we have some certainty? Or
The estimate was 9 to 12 months that Justice Manson indicated, and certainly I think it's in everybody's interest for us to proceed as expeditiously as possible. I haven't had a chance to speak with the government lawyers yet about a schedule, but that will be one of the next things we do. This I haven't received any notice of appeal yet, so I don't know what the grounds of appeal are, and that may delay things a little bit because we'll have to focus on that. But otherwise, our hope was to proceed, get the Section 7 charter right issue defined, deal with the dried marijuana limit issue and the 150-gram maximum issue, and then bear in mind that the onus shifts to the government to establish any limits under Section 1 of the charter. And that's where the evidence presumably to do with, or the lack of evidence in my submission about fire and mold and public safety will arise, and they will have to bear the burden of establishing that that warrants a limitation on the constitutional rights of the patients.
Could I get you to just to characterize the government's approach, their language? How would you characterize how they're tackling this issue, Mr. Conroy?
Well, the evidence, when examining some of their witnesses in relation to this issue, the position of the government seemed to be that the patients should wait and see how the market develops. The expert economist, his evidence essentially was that supported by other evidence, that this market is predicted by Health Canada and others to be something like 400,000 patients by 2020. And so they've seen exponential growth occurring. And so his evidence was that the market will develop. It'll just be slower over time if patients are able to continue to grow, but the market will still develop. And so they were saying the patients should wait and see. And we're saying, no, the constitutional rights of the patients and their health is surely the priority to enable them to continue. The program's been running concurrently now for some 8 or 9 months. What's the problem? Why can't it continue to run concurrently so we do see what develops? I'm told they have lots of applicants for licensed producers and have had lots of applicants for a long time. But they still only have something like 12 approved, and many of them aren't able to ship yet or actually produce or provide the patients yet. So their estimates in terms of supply, as I understand it, are based on the literature which is on the application form under the MMAR about people normally using 1 to 3 grams a day. But that flies in the face of the actual information where Health Canada apparently approved something like 188,000 kilograms last year. And that certainly isn't the supply that's there today for the patients. They say, well, that's what was authorized to be used. But again, it was a patient, doctor, looking at their situation, determining what the appropriate grams or dosage per day was, and then Health Canada had to approve that. It wasn't that Health Canada could veto that. They certainly sometimes raised questions about the grams per day, but that was really a decision between the doctor and the patient.
The system that the federal government has put together, is it essentially the concern that you're actually going to run out of supply, or is the greater concern the increased cost to patients?
The concern for the patients is the cost. The patients indicate that they have been able to produce for 50 cents to $3 per gram. If you go back to Parker, Mr. Parker grew his own plants out of economic hardship. He couldn't afford the black market prices. We say the same situation prevails now. We have patients who cannot afford black market prices, gray market prices, or the licensed producer prices as estimated and shown on their web pages and other material. So lots of patients learned to grow for themselves, took courses, made a production site, whether in their basement or in an outbuilding or whatever, learned how to do it, put their plants outdoors, some of them from time to time, to save on the electricity costs. That won't be permitted under the marijuana for medical purposes regulations. In British Columbia, as a result of the Smith case, they were allowed to use extracts. That case is still on appeal. My opinion is that patients who are grandfathered, at least those in British Columbia, will be able to continue to do so pending any appeal or changes in the court proceedings. But economics is a big factor, was a big factor in Parker, and is a big factor in this case.
Bella, what is the cost now that when patients are making or producing their own product as opposed to what the government cost is going to be per patient?
The estimated prices from the licensed producers is generally $5 to $12 and up. There are some that are coming up with a special program that can go down as low as $3 a gram. The patients tell me, and the evidence supports, that they can produce between 50 cents and $3 a gram. And Dr. Grutendorf, the economist for the government, agreed that these people were not really part of the licensed producers' target market because they won't be able to produce that cheaply. So
It would cost me It would cost me $60,000 to purchase cannabis through one of the licensed producers. $60,000 a year. And I live on under $30,000 a year. I currently own my own home, but if I were forced into the corner in that situation, it would be a question of how long I would be able to own my own home. It would certainly force me into further impoverished situations to comply with the government, or else put me in a position where I couldn't comply with the government at all and be forced to break the law to maintain the only source of medicine that is effective to treat my multiple sclerosis on a daily basis.
Wondering what your thoughts are on the notion that if the government is regulating this to the point where they require you to buy it from the government or some other source that's regulated by the government, that the product should be covered under OHIP in Ontario, for example, or provincial health drug plans?
Well, certainly if Health Canada are going to back patients into that fine of a corner, there should be some form of provincial healthcare coverage. But currently, cannabis doesn't have a DIN number, a drug identification number, which makes it easier for the provinces to turn away from providing coverage for it.
And right now, there is no attempt to get a DIN number for cannabis in this country, so it would be virtually impossible for it to be covered without that.
although it's covered